Hello and welcome back to our study of Peninei Halacha, the teachings of Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, Shlita. We continue our learning on a Tuesday as we go through our week and what we know as the Yoms. Yesterday was Yom HaShoah, of course, coming up Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut. Very, very different feeling and flavor this year, but I guess we'll discuss when we get closer. We continue our learning. Please daven for Chayalei Tzva Haganah Yisrael, Refuah Shalem L'Cholam Yisrael that need, safe return of our hostages, and we dedicate our learning L'Ili Nishmat Seren Daniel Shimon ben Harav Doron V'Sheli Hashem Yikum Damo. Next chapter, Ad Hechan Chovas HaTochacha. So how far does one have to go when giving rebuke? How many times do you have to tell someone it's wrong? Amar Chachamim, the Gemara above Metzia says, we just had it in Daf Yomi not too long ago, Hocheach afilu mea pa'amim mashma. When it says Hocheach, to give rebuke even 100 times. But however, this is only if there's a possibility, or you can figure out that maybe somebody will listen. But if you think that there's no possibility someone will listen, then the mitzvah does not extend beyond one time. And more than that, it doesn't pay. A tremendous lesson in life. The Gemara in Yevamos Daf Samach Hey, it's Paskin in Shulchan Aruch, or Chaim Tarf Reish Ches, that just like there is a mitzvah to say something that will be heard, there's also a mitzvah not to say something that won't be heard. One could certainly apply this to many areas in life, and I think we as rabbis who preach often and teach often, we have to take this into account. Not everything that is in your head needs to be said. You have to evaluate your audience, and you have to know who's listening. Will they listen? Is this a suitable message? Is this something that will go in or not? So we have to evaluate these types of cheshbonos. The kitzur amachos. How does one do the protest? So nechlaku b'zamaram. So we have a machlokas in Amaram in the Gemara. Ladas rav al amachiach lochich hasachote betokef kazeh an shechote yiratzel hakoso. Rav took a very strong stance. He says you have to reprimand the sinner with such might, with such strength, until the sinner is ready to strike you. L'das Shmuel, according to Shmuel, however, it has to be sharp, but not until the point where it'll come to blows. But maybe only until he wants to curse you. L'das Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan says it has to be in such a way that it annoys the sinner enough that he just says, I don't listen to you anymore. The Rishonim argue, who do we paskin like? Ladas hasmag, according to the Sefer Mitzvahs Gedolos, Halacha Rabbi Yochanan, shatochacha ad nezifa. He paskin like the third opinion, that until it just creates disgust. Ulam harambam pasak shatochacha ad haka. Rambam says no, it has to be like the first opinion, like Rav, until it comes to blows. V'chein kasav, and he writes in Hilchos Deos, v'chein tabed chayav lochich ad sheyakeu achota v'yomalo eini shomeya. It has to be that you give rebuke until the sinner hits him, and he says, I'm not listening. V'chol she'efshar b'yada limchos v'eina mamacha hu nispas ba'avon elu kulam she'efshar lo limchos b'hem. And he says, and if a person has the ability to protest and he doesn't, well, then he's going to be swallowed up in that sin as well. So as we have learned, when you see that perhaps your words could get through and they will be listened to when you protest, you say something is wrong, you should do it up until 100 times or even more. And according to the Rambam, the stricter opinion, until the sinner wants to strike you. And it doesn't mean that you have to physically and literally come to blows. And the Rambam says, of course, and based on this, that if it's not going to be listened to, then you should just stop at one. Let's say we're talking about a public wrongdoing as well. But let's say we want to have public protest against a public policy. And here in Israel, he's talking about, let's say, the Memshalah, the government, wants to take down settlements and to uproot their inhabitants. So we have to protest. And as long as you think that the protest will help. He says you have to keep protesting until maybe the police are going to come and strike you. So we have to ask, what's the purpose of protesting until it comes to blows? And specifically if it's not even going to help. So he says you have to know that when it comes to protest, there are two purposes. The first is that you make an attempt to get the sinner to come down from his perch and to hopefully repent from his sin. But when you see that it's clear that your protest is not going to prevent him from sinning, but you still have a mitzvah to give rebuke, so that everybody is clear, that everybody else should know how strict and how grave the sin is. So why does it have to be so sharp as we talk about violence coming to blows? Because if you don't say it in a strong fashion, then people are going to think it's not such a big deal. And we find that people protest very strongly when it comes to their property, when it comes to their honor. So if we protest when somebody's crossing our property line or somebody's taking money out of my account, we should be no less strong in our protest against the Torah and the mitzvos. Again, one has to use seichel when doing so, and that's why we see the protest culture in Israel is very, very strong, and you add that with Israel personalities, so one can only imagine. And if you've seen Israeli protests, you see what I'm talking about. But here we're talking about we don't want it to be said that when something wrong was being done, that we stood idly by and we accepted it, so to speak. So therefore, macha is very, very important. So thank you for learning with us, continuing to learn with us. We continue to daven for the brave soldiers of the IDF, Refuah Shalema L'Chol Am Yisrael, safe return of our hostages, and we study our Torah L'Ili Nishmas, Sarah and Daniel Shema Ben Rav Dorna Vasheli, Hashem Yakum Damo. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.